Welcome to the Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies. This new podcast will come along with a version that has plenty of visuals, so Facebook and YouTube viewers have something they can watch, while others can still get the same impact just listening to it as a podcast or on a CD. We hope you enjoy episode 3 of the Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies.
The Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies, with your host, Phil Congleton. Guest starring Chris Mich, Corey Yaktus, and Randy Petras. Special commentary by Mike Gleason and Rich Shumaker. Music by Garth Ivan. Directed and edited by Phil Congleton. Episode 3, Clash of the Titans.
A few weeks ago, on March 30th, 2012, Wrath of the Titans was released to theaters, and in honor of the release of that film, we are going to devote this episode to its predecessor, Clash of the Titans, and compare that film to its original 1981 counterpart, and finish up with a review of Wrath of the Titans as well. We may touch on other Ray Harryhausen classics along the way to help with the discussion, and later on in the podcast we will discuss new reviews on some new releases and finish some unfinished business. Greetings from the Yaktus studio in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. My name is Phil Congleton. First, let me introduce my guest. He is the guy who inspired us to do this kind of audio podcast format, thanks to his own ingenious audio blog series entitled Digging Star Wars, now entering its 3rd season, Mr. Chris Mich.
Hey! Woo! I believe he invented the internet, too.
Yes. Thanks for inviting me back.
Hey, no problem, man. It's because of you that we're doing these kind of things, so kudos to you, dude. Thanks. Cool. He is an accomplished video editor, producer, and filmmaker, and a huge Clash of the Titans fan. Corey Yaktus.
Woo, Clash of the Titans. Woo! It's the best movie ever made. I'm going out on a limb.
And the owner of Yaktus Studios.
Yes, and the owner of Yaktus Studios.
Yeah, well,
yes.
the bank owns it.
Really.
Yeah.
And our rookie showing up for the first time in our podcast, a skillful administrator in the IT field and a big movie buff, Randy Petras.
Thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
It looked like you were...
I know. Well, there's going to be a lot of WWF references in this, trust me.
There are glad.
Heard it this quarter.
How is everybody?
Sunday.
Doing great.
Sunday.
Real good. I didn't see Clash of Titans all the way through, probably till college. Actually, I've seen bits and pieces, but I was one of those. I was growing up in a household that didn't have HBO, so I didn't get that initial run. I didn't get to see it in theaters. I've seen a lot of his other work, but I hadn't seen that. And it was interesting because it kind of all resurfaced when they did the remake of Clash of Titans. Was that 2010? 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, you and I went to see that together, too.
That was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun, and, we'll save our opinions for movies until then. And then recently, just in prepping for this, what's great is you were clearing out your VHS collection of It Came From Beneath the Sea and Mysterious Island and Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Jason and the Argonauts.
Jason and the Argonauts, that was the other one.
And, I hate to be repeating myself from the last episode, but just like watching the Marx Brothers with my boys, I was watching these films, and my 9-year-old ate this stuff up with a fork and spoon.
Mm-hmm.
And
as he should.
Yeah, it was really, really cool, and really, it makes sense. And you watch this stuff, and then it's great. And out of all the films, the Harryhausen films just mentioned, like, I think Clash of Titans is more in the bottom of that list for me.
I agree. I think it's actually his worst film. Yeah. But that's not a knock on it because it's still fairly good. But,
right.
I think it's his worst out of his whole batch of films he's done. I got a chance to watch It Came From Beneath the Sea on DVD finally. Widescreen and all. It's
nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, our good friend Mike Gleason sent us back some audio of an experience that he had meeting Harryhausen about 10 years ago.
Well, it's not much of a story, but like 10 years ago, maybe even more than that now, I used to work at MTV Animation.
Oh, wow.
And I was just a writer's assistant there. But I was on the same floor where they did all of the Celebrity Deathmatch claymation work. So one day they made an announcement that Ray Harryhausen was coming in to visit.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I didn't even know who he was really. But then people said that he was the guy who did Clash of the Titans, and of course I knew exactly who he was. So, but he spoke to everybody just sort of in the cubicle area, and brought in some of the figures from Clash of the Titans, which was really cool to see. They were very small.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was very odd. Like I was standing like by this guy, listening to him talk, but I really didn't know too much about him. And then I learned so much about him afterwards that I realized it's kind of like after the fact that I was in the presence of greatness, but
wow.
In the moment I didn't really realize that, which I'm embarrassed by. But he was a super nice guy. He showed everybody some of the figures and just kind of talked to everyone about how he used to do things, and he was honestly
but it was interesting trying to compare the work you did on Celebrity Deathmatch with the work of Ray Harryhausen.
It's a heck of a lot simpler now. You can back up a frame to see what you did on your last frame. There's a lot more of a computer element to it. But in his day, knowing what he did to animate that is just, it's so impressive, especially having worked so closely with all those guys making Celebrity Deathmatch. Not that I worked on that show, but just being around them.
You kind of understand what Ray Harryhausen had to go through.
Yeah, and that was great, and those guys were highly skilled, and I was always impressed by them. But then to think that Ray did it without the help of all the technology, that's just mind-blowing to me. So it was really cool.
You basically met a guy who worked on the original Mighty Joe Young, which is just effing awesome.
That's really awesome. Yeah, there weren't a lot of people doing that kind of animation at that time, so while I was an idiot in the room who didn't really know who he was, the crowd of animators was genuinely impressed and really showed a lot of respect for him. So I think everybody got a little something out of it.
Well, dude, I thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I know you're busy right now moving into your new place, so I appreciate you helping us out for this podcast, and we hope to see you soon helping us out for a regular podcast in the future. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. I love being on this podcast. Thanks, Phil.
We are doing something a little different in this podcast. We are recording our podcast and at the same time recording an episode of Chris's Digging Star Wars podcast. Yeah, with luck, the Dying Breed Movie Club podcast will be out by the end of April, and then you were saying the one with you and Corey's coming out in
probably May.
May.
Yeah,
okay.
We're trying to figure it out. We're recording a lot of season 3 episodes in advance and out of order. So Phil and I are going to be doing our first episode, which is tying episode 1 to
we'll call it Joining Forces.
Yeah, to Buster Keaton's 7 Chances.
Yeah,
which is really cool. So
I'm making my 3rd appearance in Digging Star Wars.
That episode will be up by the time this episode's up.
Yeah.
We'll go from there.
So to hear more about Mysterious Island and hear a comparison of it to Star Wars Episode 2: Attack of the Clones, check out Chris's Digging Star Wars podcast. Whatever Clash of the Titans has become today, it will always be remembered as a creation started by Ray Harryhausen with the original film. But we need to have a starting point to this podcast. So before we get into Clash of the Titans, we wanted to look at some earlier Harryhausen work. And the film we chose was Mysterious Island because of the similarities in creature effects.
I think the animation in Mysterious Island is better than the animation in Clash of the Titans. I think it's a little more fluid.
But a lot of it's easier.
Yeah,
because
sure
they're working with a lot of crustaceans and things like that, which are a lot easier to animate.
Yeah.
Well, that chicken looked pretty bad.
Really?
Yes, the way that its legs
I
were
thought
bending,
all
the way that its body was shifting,
mock-ups were, but
I think it was edited better, as well as it. I think they did a better job in editing and shooting in Mysterious Island as well.
Yeah,
but a crab running around is much easier than a snake.
But you point out something really interesting. One thing that we noticed when we were watching it at home with Mysterious Island was the compositing is way better.
Oh yeah,
than it is in Clash of the Titans. And there's a lot of in the fur and stuff. The way they cut around the fur, it's really seamless as far as the compositing. Whereas in this, you can always tell the little black outlines, and you can very much tell. Yeah. How bad the cuts are.
Right. There's also a contrast difference between what's being animated in the background. A lot of times they'll do the animation over a plate.
But now,
they'll light it. And
is that the film or is that this transfer? Because the transfer on this DVD is horrific.
Yeah, who knows?
It's actually really, really bad. I mean, it's, late night, $1 million movie.
I can get past all of the special effects, but watching Mysterious Island felt so... I couldn't stop laughing.
Wow.
I couldn't. It was so disjointed. The storytelling was so poor. It would go from scene to scene with no bridge, no sense, no meaning. It would just be after they fought the crab and they pushed it in. The dialogue after that scene was, haha, we're all laughing and jumping and dancing. And suddenly the young kid was like, I'm a pussy. And it was so disjointed. It's like everybody's dancing and singing and playing the harmonica and singing around, and all of a sudden everything stops instantly, and he goes, I ran away from a battle. I was like, what? Where did your head go to?
Yeah.
How did you get to that after you just boiled a crab, a giant crab?
But that kind of bad writing happens today, too.
It does, but it's...
Yeah, but
I
they
have a hard
established
time...
that, like, to defend that line, they established that part of his character in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Right, it was still awkward. But it was still an awkward transition. It was like, oh, remember that time when we said that he was scared and he ran away? We got to bring that up again. Let's just do it here. It's like, I'm going to be sad now, so I'm not going to care how I get there. I'm not going to care where it goes. I'm just going to be sad right now. And then I'm going to be happy.
To one of those points, too, with the whole Harryhausen collection, I was thinking a lot, how many people actually saw these movies when they went to the drive-in to watch these movies? Like, I'm wondering, like, are there just, like, teenagers making out like crazy? Like, this is the excuse to go? So, like, again, my 9-year-old, fork and spoon.
Sure.
Like, it was just like, yeah, that guy, he's got to get it together. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the young guy that attacks the bird at the end he saves the women. So, like, Peter, my son Peter, was like, yeah! Like, he did it! Like, he got it! He stabbed him! He got over it!
But it seems so forced and intentional.
But like a lot of those things, it's taken from a book. I mean, it's taken from a Jules Verne book, and, they had to establish a lot of the lines that were in that, and a lot of the characterization that was in the book, and just like any book-to-movie translation, you move things around as you need to.
How do you
get... Harryhausen talked about that in the Verne book, that was, like, it's really just how to survive on a desert island.
Here's my whole point of when I was watching this. I got distracted from the movie with a philosophical debate in my head that was, is it okay to make fun of these movies? And at what point do you stop saying, well, it was the time, it was amazing for the time, it was to appreciate it for what it was then. And that was 51 years ago.
Yeah.
At what point is it okay for me to stop? Like I fight myself for making fun of this, because in my head I'm like, wow, that was amazing for the time. It was amazing, special effects that they were breaking ground. And now all movies today are just standing on the shoulders of giants. They're standing on the shoulders of geniuses.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with you doing it. I think quite frankly, that's what podcasts and everything that we're doing, that's what they're about. They're about being snarky and poking at it. That's why when you are positive about a film, listeners were like, well, thank you for not being a hater. Like, thank you for just liking a movie. And I think that's a big thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. I think looking at, not just us, but people listening, people that are in the old films, when we look at these films, we are actually kinder, even though we laugh at things like that. I think 50 years from now, when they're looking at the crap we're pumping out now, they're not going to be kind at all.
Well, they shouldn't be.
No, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, I think we're a lot more cautious about that type of stuff.
Okay.
I love this movie. I always go B+ with it. I can sit and watch this film like reading a book. And yeah, Corey, you did point out some great bad things in it, but I'm not.
I'm good for that.
I'm not gonna bash.
Way
it
to go,
totally.
jerk!
I'm the asshole.
So, Chris, what grade do you give this?
I love Mysterious Island, and I loved it before, and I loved it watching it with my son, and I, of course, tying it to Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I'm going to give it a solid B, because I think it's a solid B movie.
Cool. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah, Randy, one of the things that separates me from all the other film podcast people is I like to grade things. So can you assign a letter grade
Absolutely.
to this movie?
Yeah, and I will give it a solid B-, only because of a lot of the Harryhausen films, this is not one that holds a lot of the nostalgia for me. I mean, the Sinbad movies all are way up there in my book. This is one that does not capture my attention and doesn't really, feed my nostalgic, youth the way a lot of those other ones do. but it's still Harryhausen. I'm still watching it, and I'm still enjoying a lot of the things that I enjoyed about those kinds of movies. So it's a B- for me.
Do you think Mysterious Island is better than Clash of the Titans?
I do not.
Okay.
I do.
I was wondering where they fell on the scale, the
But
Randy scale.
That's as a movie, you know, as the whole picture, not necessarily the Harryhausen effects. As we mentioned earlier, I think actually a lot of the effects are better in Mysterious Island, but maybe it's because of the compositing. Maybe it's because of the simplicity of the designs. You know, we talk a little bit about the crab design versus, you know, the Pegasus design. It's a much easier character to pull off.
And I think a little bit has to do with what you said earlier about the directing too, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So what kind of a grade are you going to give this, Corey?
Everything in life is about context. If I compare it to other Ray Harryhausen films that I've seen, I think it's one of his best from what he's done. But he didn't direct it. He didn't write it. He didn't do any of the other. He didn't act in it.
Yeah.
Watching it, I didn't know what to expect. I expected it, having never seen it or read the Jules Verne, the book about it. I was expecting it to be so much worse and so much less entertaining than it was. I think because of all of the kitschiness and all of the you know, what the societal effects on the movie of the time it was made.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
It's an entertaining movie.
It is.
I'm going to watch it again, so I would give it an 8.
Okay.
There you go.
And
Wow, I'm impressed.
I will tell you why. Because if I'm going to watch it again, this is the grading scale for me. If I see a movie and I flat out hate it, but have to watch it again because I hated it so much, I can't believe I hated it that much, like all the prequels, I have to watch it again just to know that maybe I was just in a bad mood that day.
And here is Chris's promo for his Digging Star Wars audio blog podcast.
Digging Star Wars, the online journal of the films that inspired George Lucas to create the Star Wars saga. Please look for our next episode on diggingstarwars.blogspot.com. With that in mind, think, post, and accept my thanks for listening.
Clash of the Titans was the final installment of the great career of special effects master Ray Harryhausen, who, believe it or not, is still alive today, 31 years later, at age 92.
He's still alive?
Yeah, he's still alive.
I did not know that. So
But
But
this
he moves
was
in stop motion.
Yeah, he moves in stop motion.
So we don't know if he's alive. Someone could.
He's
be
got
animated.
handlers and move him around. Yes.
Do we got the eyes right?
But still, this is really strange that this is still was his last film. So the man who mastered stop motion effects and basically created his own subgenre, which is basically called Harryhausen films, decided that after this film, audiences were getting kind of tired and worn out by his form of filmmaking. So he bowed out, very quietly and put the end on a great career. And Randy is going to take us through the plot.
The plot of the film is pretty simple. I mean, it is the story of Perseus, who is the son of Zeus, and as a demigod, he has a lot of the strength and heroic stuff that, we would know typically for Hercules or characters like that. And he gets embroiled in this fight, against the gods against themselves, sort of infighting. My son can do this, and your son cannot do that. And the gods are pitting their various children against each other as tests. And of course, there's a young budding romance in the film between Perseus and Andromeda. He has to save the girl, win her heart, get married, and of course defeat the Kraken.
Yeah.
So there's
Release the Kraken.
That's the short synopsis of it. In the beginning of the story, Zeus makes Perseus with the daughter of King Agresius. And she was a beautiful woman, and the king had her locked away in a tower or whatever behind closed doors, and she gets pregnant. Of course, he gets mad because, Zeus effectively rapes his daughter.
Oh no, he came as a golden shower.
He came as a golden shower.
Weird.
Don't go there. And Perseus is the result. The king takes his daughter and Perseus into a casket, throws them into the sea, and as a result of that, Zeus wipes out his city. Again, when we get to the other story, it totally changes.
Yeah, there's a lot of difference between...
There's tons of difference, and it...
So basically, there's a lot of there's a lot of plot. Monster shows up. Plot. Monster shows up, and we have this story with humans and gods and demigods.
But one of the things I think that really stands out in the '81 version of Clash of the Titans is it ultimately is the story of a boy, a girl, and them falling in love, and all the trials and tribulations. That same story can be tied to just about anything. I mean, you can go back
General
to...
Hospital.
It could be General Hospital.
Star Wars.
Star Wars is the one that comes to mind. Yeah, the story of a boy, a girl, and a galaxy. In this case, it's a boy, a girl, and a kingdom. But it's an age-old story, and it's a simple story. And, you know, he has to fight the big monster and save the girl. And, you know, it's a very happy-go-lucky, old-style film.
Yes.
And you said many times that this was the last Harryhausen film, and he you know, hung up his, you know, hat after this. It's very important when you look at the film as a whole that the whole thing really is just like an old movie from... It's 1981, but this movie is not a movie from 1981.
Exactly.
This is a movie from
I mean,
1967.
unless you pay too much attention to the hairstyles, but
That's what threw me off with this.
Yeah.
Watching it now, I loved this movie. I was so into this movie. It was like I said, one of the 20
and the cast kind of
VHS, VHS tapes that I ever had.
Yeah.
And just watched it all the way through college.
But
and,
yeah, the style of movie that it is
but
harkens
it's
back.
so
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
It's so like
It's a simple movie.
yeah.
The type of movie that it is a movie from a day gone by, and in a world, and to tie back into Star Wars, after 1977, the universe changed.
Yes.
And special effects changed, and the style of movie making had changed. And I remember as a kid, when this came out, we saw it, and it's like, really? Like, this looks like old movie garbage. And in a world after Star Wars where it looked real...
Yeah.
You weren't blown away by this, and Harryhausen did the right thing. It was the right time to hang up his hat.
Exactly.
It was the right time to do that. And as much as I love the movie, when it first came out, I remember not liking it.
I saw it in the theaters, and it's interesting that you say that about Star Wars. And earlier you mentioned Raiders of the Lost Ark, because Raiders of the Lost Ark came out the same week as Clash of the Titans, and that's why it was swept aside. And
Makes sense.
And what's Raiders? Raiders is a serial film.
Yep.
A
It's an old
1930s
serial film.
But it didn't try to hide that fact at all.
No, it trumped it up.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
And
It relied on it.
Yeah, but it also did it so much better.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
Here's the thing:
What
how
were you
much
gonna say?
stop motion was there in Star Wars?
There's a lot.
Tons.
Not all three
Yeah.
of those movies have
The
stop
at
motion.
walkers, the
That's
tauntauns.
Empire.
Yes.
That's 1980. But
Yeah.
the
But
Tauntauns and the Adwalkers. Yeah.
Empire was a stop motion film, but if you go back again, listening to some of the interviews with Lucas, you know, the original one was a space movie film where they had, you know, the ships on the sticks. The second movie was a stop motion film where they used tons of stop motion. The third one was
A Muppet film.
It was a Muppet film. Yeah, and
Wow,
and,
yeah,
he,
it
and
was.
he specifically said it. Like, he didn't want to do stop motion as much in Jedi as he did in Empire. He's like, I did that. You know, I did my stop motion film. I'm done. And that was 1980. This was 81, and you can't even look at
Well, it's funny.
them the same way.
It's funny too because this even is mentioned in the Wikipedia entry in regards to Clash of Titans. Like when I was rewatching it, whatever the past week, the owl was the only thing I remembered from previously watching the film, and the owl was so R2D2, like
Well, he is
chirpy, beepy, stupid, gets into trouble, does nothing, and. In the Wikipedia entry, it mentions that Harryhausen really had to defend the owl, saying, "I didn't rip off R2D2. I was developing this character way before Star Wars."
Yeah.
Okay, Clash of Titans came out in 81, and R2D2 appeared on the first time on screen in 77.
Right.
So you tell me you had this character for 4 years. You know, you were developing this owl character for 4. Like I don't know when Clash of Titans went into production.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really hard to believe. It felt like I got to give them something to draw the Star Wars fans.
right.
over.
Well, I mean,
gotta
the
give them-
kids
yeah.
today want robots.
R2-D2 wasn't original either. Go back 20 more years,
Yeah, I mean,
you've got
exactly.
a dozen
It's-
characters making beeping noises.
Yeah,
No, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Danger Will Robinson.
Yeah,
I mean, that same era, they had that Buck Rogers TV show. They had
Yeah.
Twiggy.
Yeah,
you know,
Tweaky.
But there's always that little sidekick thing in just about everything.
Well,
you know, so.
but that's a post-Star Wars world too, because Buck Rogers came out after Star Wars, and again,
TV series came
TV
out.
series,
Yeah,
right? It's like, but kids want robots.
This is one of those things too, the nostalgia of movies. What Star Wars was. Clash of the Titans, as bad as it was and as hokey as the effects were and stuff, there was something comforting about it to me. And, I saw it in theaters.
He's a
and
nut about Clash of the Titans too. Don't
I am.
let
I'm
him
a
fool
total
you.
nut
Yeah.
about this movie. So there's something about the sound of it and the scenes and the actors and that stupid owl that is comforting to me. It's a time in my life where I realized I was growing. I was learning. I was my life was going to change. I was under the supervision of my parents and living sort of protected, and I was becoming my own person at that point. And this movie was always there for me. It was the sounds. It was
I was
the
a teenager when
visuals.
it came out.
When
so.
when I was in high school, a friend of mine, Rob Schraub, had been making stop motion films by himself out of clay with his grandfather's old 8mm, little click button that had the trigger on it that would take 4 frames at a time. And I had seen a couple of them. I said, "Hey, I would love to help you do some of these and make them." And this was high school, so I was 14, 15 years old, and we're set up in his basement with a bunch of lumps of clay, styrofoam packing from boxes, building a space set, and learning how to make lasers with a lamp without a shade on it, a box with an angled piece of glass, cellophane that was red on the top, and moving it, the light bulb, over the top, shooting lasers, making lightsabers, creating all of these stop motion, like, horrible, no plot, no nothing, just because it looked cool.
Oh, like Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, just like Clash of the Titans. But it was because of the Clash of the Titans and stuff and Ray Harryhausen that were like, how does he do this? How does he make inanimate objects move across? And it's like the magic of movies. And everything about movies is magic and takes you away from what you're going through and what's happening.
Exactly.
in
That's
your
why I
life.
love him so
And
much.
and to try to make something out of it and try to make something that emulate what they're doing. I think
That's a really cool story, and
yeah.
it's funny because that's almost exactly what he did.
Yeah.
In his career, because he had seen King Kong, and then he basically did the same thing. He went to his garage, and his dad was an engineer. He had his dad build armatures for him, and he put the stuff around the armatures and practiced with it, built demo reels, and then went to movie companies and said, "Hey, look what I can do."
Yeah,
and that's what he did to build his career. It's just really amazing that you
And
guys
I
did
think
the
he
same
was
thing.
like a PA on Mighty Joe Young or
Right.
something like that. Like, real low on the totem pole, but still,
Right.
it was the start.
Yeah, Rob and I did not get that far. We did, however, win the Fond du Lac, Wisconsin movie award.
Very good.
There you
go.
go. Special effects, yeah.
there
It's
you
very
go.
big. I'm surprised you haven't heard of it.
And yet it's more movie awards than I've won.
And as bad as Clash of the Titans, the original one, is, there's something about it that reminds me of life, about growing up, about just
But I think
this exploration of movies.
In part, I mean, the movie lends itself to that because it is a happy movie. And I mentioned earlier on that it was a movie out of time. Like, it is a movie from an earlier, happier era in a world where, Raiders and Star Wars were making things gritty and more real the way movies are today. That was the jumping off point to the movies we have today. But that was a movie where everything was clean and neat and happy, and the plot moved along very simply and directly. The gods were manipulative, but they weren't totally dickish. They weren't causing wars. They were just meddling. They're just poking in the affairs of humans. And yes, Zeus wipes out of town.
Zeus
He got
was a
pissed.
little dickish.
He was a little dickish.
Yeah,
Right.
well, yeah, he was mad because he put the baby in the coffin and sent it out to sea.
Sent it out, and he got mad because they
And
tried
then,
to
and
kill his
that's how
kid.
the whole story goes out.
The whole story kicks off. But it has a good logical progression. As a story, if you just look at it as a story, I was watching it very critically when I watched it this week, and it really follows a very, again, a simple plot, but everything goes from point A to point B, and you can easily follow it. Yeah. You know, Zeus gets pissed because they try and kill his kid. He rescues his kid. Maggie Smith, I wish I could remember what character she was, but they...
Thetis.
Okay.
Goddess of the Sea?
Yeah. But her son gets, raped over the coals because he kills a bunch of Zeus's Pegasus.
Well, he was a dick. I mean, the kid
asshole,
was a dick.
and he deserved what he got. But
Right.
but at the same time, he gets punished for what he did. She gets mad because her kid gets, shafted. And then all the meddling continues, so then Andromeda gets thrown in.
You know what? The Greek gods were parents. The
They were.
parents of today. You know what? I don't want scores to be kept at a baseball game because everybody should be treated equally.
Right.
That's what Maggie Smith was.
That's basically
she
what
was
she
the
was doing.
mom that wanted her kid to get everything as equal as every other
Well, he
kid.
gets a trophy
Whether he
too.
whether he tried as hard, whether he practiced as hard or studied as hard, everybody should be treated equal.
Your son was picking his nose in the outfield, but he gets an award too.
Yeah.
And that's something else we should talk about is Maggie.
noses?
Wait. What?
Maggie,
Finally, something I can talk about.
Maggie Smith's son in the film is part human and part stop motion animation.
Oh yes.
So
He is.
it's
And I liked him way better, and he was way scarier when he was a real person.
yeah.
he
Well,
Who was he? Who played what actor? 'Cause
I tried to look it up.
That voice
I
was
can't-
amazing,
I
and it
can't
sounded like
find it.
Vincent Price.
They actually mentioned the name of the actor in. He does sound like Vincent Price. He sounds exactly like Vincent Price, and I thought that's who he was. But I checked it out in the extra materials,
Oh,
and
it's
they
in
do
there?
say it. I don't remember
Oh
the
really?
guy's
Because
name.
I looked it up. I was trying to find it everywhere and I couldn't find it.
don't know
See,
the
that's the
name of the
problem.
Calabas.
That's the problem. It's hard to find out because he's considered a stop motion character. He's not a real guy. He's like some extra they took off the set.
Yeah, no,
to-
it's in the supplemental
Really?
material. You can.
But I thought
find it.
that was
Check it out.
interesting. That was probably the only time they ever did that too.
Well, and he was originally supposed to be entirely stop motion. Again, another thing they mentioned in the supplements. He was supposed to be just the stop motion character, but they had so many close-ups that they didn't want to do all the face motions for the close-ups, so they just got an actor and they put the makeup on it.
Problem is the actor wasn't as muscular as the sculpture.
Yeah, that was him. But
And
the emotion in his face was so much.
But and that's another thing. Like that character as a kid, when I would watch that movie in repeats on Channel 48, Saturday afternoon monster movies, I loved that character.
Yeah.
He was so cool. He had the one arm gets cut off, and then he hits the
the
fork
bloody
for the
stump.
arm. Oh my god.
Okay, this is what I was going to ask Chris earlier.
Oh boy. Okay.
You have taken classes in Greek mythology.
Oh, don't set me up.
Which one of these is closer to the actual mythology?
Oh, you mean
The
between
movies.
the 81 and the
Yeah,
remake?
the 81 and the remake.
Well, I gotta say this.
Neither.
because- No. Yes, I did take a course in Greek mythology, and I took tons of notes and everything else, and I'm still confused about Greek mythology. All right, but I will say this: that in watching both films, I remember saying the film. I think when we were in the theaters with the remake recently, like, man, like they just kind of took it and then ran with it. Like they didn't worry about being true to anything. Not, I don't think they need to be purist about it. They're
They call
plugging
that
things.
artistic license.
Yes. So, like, and just kind of following these stories and whatnot, it's like, well, they kind of pulled a little from this, and they kind of pulled a little, just from the little bit I read. Like, there's so much out there.
Right.
But that's the thing you learn in a lot of Greek mythology courses is that, they would write one myth and perform the play and whatnot, and then someone else in another town would take the same story and rewrite it and rework it to kind of, like, get their own spin on it.
Right.
Kind of like we're saying, like Spielberg did with War of the Worlds. I want to put my stamp on it. I want to put my stamp
Right.
on it. So I don't think you can look at either of these, the 81 Clash of Titans or the remake and say, like, this is pure Greek mythology.
Right.
I really don't think it is.
I think that's very true, and not to keep going back to the supplements, but they do mention that as well in the interview with Harryhausen. He specifically says, he's like, this didn't quite work for us. The Kraken is a good example. In the original Greek mythology, it was actually supposed to be the Leviathan.
Right.
But they changed it to the Kraken because the
was
Leviathan
wondering
as
about
a
that,
name
too.
wasn't as interesting.
I think
Release the Leviathan!
Leviathan, yeah.
Too many syllables.
I will say this
Doesn't-
from what little I can recall, because I have a Swiss cheese memory. Jason and the Argonauts is probably closer to the actual myth than Clash of the Titans.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I remember
watch Jason the Argonauts. It is one of the best Harryhausen
Yes,
films.
you absolutely should do that anyway. It is a fantastic.
Because I remember watching that and watching the extras regarding Jason the Argonauts. Harryhausen was like, "Yeah, I know in the myth it's this, but I wanted to do it this way." But he had to me he had a lot of reasoning for what he was doing with that film. And I haven't seen a lot of the featurettes and whatnot with Clash of Titans, the 81 version. So.
Yeah, they were very, very interesting. They revealed a lot of stuff that I didn't know. Like I said, I don't know the Greek mythology. I know the peripheral stuff. I know who Perseus is. I know who Hercules is. I know some of the main stories. I don't know a lot of the details. I don't know the details of that particular part of the Perseus myth. And to hear that they had changed something as integral to this story as changing the Leviathan to the Kraken, and the Leviathan is a very different creature than what you know as the Kraken that shows up on screen here. And he totally made that thing up as just a real cool thing. You know, it's supposed to be one of the Titans. When we get into the remake, we'll find out they totally changed that as well. But they continue and use the Kraken. He also made a lot of edits with Medusa. Medusa's another character. In the original Greek mythology, she was still a woman. She just had the snake hair. She was beautiful. She was still supposed to be beautiful. I think somebody, mentions at some point that in the remake, the Medusa's beautiful. She's very pretty. Just has the snake hair and the snake body. In the original mythology, she is a beautiful woman with snake hair. Harryhausen is the one that gave her the serpent body.
Interesting.
Harryhausen is the one that gave her the rattlesnake tail. He's the one that gave her the snake-like appearance in the face, because he wanted a cool-looking monster to animate.
Right.
And yet again, it's another seminal character from my childhood. I can watch that Medusa scene over and over and over. This week alone, I think I watched just the Medusa scene 5 times.
In the 81
version.
Right.
The 81 version.
There were so many differences between how poorly made the 81 version is. Like, the things that I find bad. All of the characters that Perseus goes on the road trip with to go cut off Medusa's head, you don't know any one of them. You never even see their face. They got the Roman masks on, and there's like one dude that carries the owl, and he says his name.
They have
you just
red
don't
capes
know.
that
Yes.
that
that
is
too.
disposable.
But you don't. It's not like a road trip buddy movie.
Well,
and in the
I was-
remake,
I was-
you like care about these guys when they die a
Well,
little bit.
when they do, there's 2 guys left, and when they, I don't know if they die with Medusa or they die with the green dude.
I was going to mention
There's a lot of
that,
emotion when that one guy dies. Perseus is really upset about that, and I was like, oh, okay, so now we care.
Yeah.
Right? That's like there was nothing in
Yeah.
81 that
Yeah.
binded every. I was never afraid that Perseus was going to not make it.
Yeah.
The whole
Yeah,
time
right.
I'm
I
like,
wanted-
all right, he's gonna be fine.
I wanted to compare that to how they handled the guys with the red tunics on Star Trek. You know, those 2 guys that go in with him to go after Medusa.
They're gone.
They're gone.
just don't care.
Disposable.
Yeah, because they had the helmets on and the red capes.
But
So-
as a movie making just meme that goes on today, that happens in movies and TV shows today.
You need those guys.
You need those guys, but it's
You
just
just
funny.
need 'em.
It's funny how bad the unnamed character, how bad a rap that guy gets. I mean,
all right, I'm probably going to be the jerk on this one. Actually,
Can I go first?
Yeah, you go first.
C?
We'll go in reverse.
Wow, you gave it a C?
Yep.
This film was instrumental to your life.
As a film, it's context.
See,
It's what context?
Yeah,
as something that still gives me pleasure. It doesn't have to be good to give me pleasure.
He's giving it a critical grade of a C, but as a guilty pleasure, it's
Yeah,
an A
and-
for him, right?
yeah.
What grade do you give it, Randy?
I go the exact opposite way, and I will give it an A.
Nice.
For a lot of the same reasons, because it is the nostalgia factor, and I admit that, but as a movie out of history, it's fun. It's still fun to watch. And one thing I had mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in the podcast or just when we were talking beforehand, I sat down to watch this. I've seen this movie 5 million times. I sat down to watch it this week, and I had some other stuff to do. I brought down my laptop. I set up my laptop. I was starting to type. The movie was on for about 3 minutes, and I closed my laptop. And I just sat there, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. And I can admit that part of that is nostalgia. Part of it is it's just a fun movie.
Yeah.
It makes you happy.
It's like Mysterious Island. It's just fun to watch.
It's just a fun movie to watch. I enjoyed the heck out of it. It's a simple story that's easy to follow, that a lot of movies today try and make a hell of a lot more hay out of what they're doing. It's like, you're not that important.
Yeah.
You're just a movie. You know, let me enjoy myself for the next 2 hours of my life. And I enjoyed the crap out of it. and it was great.
Yeah. Christopher?
Are you going to keep my grade in, or you got to cut it out like the last episode?
I didn't cut it out.
You
If you
cut out my grade.
Only because you gave it an F.
If you would watch the viewer
did you
assist
give an F?
version, you would
No.
see it up there.
If you keep my grade in, I'll grade it.
That's because he started going off on this tangent about E's and F's.
You got to get
A, B, C, D, F.
It's an E.
It's a solid E.
I'm giving it a solid E.
I hate you.
I want that in there. And it's so special a movie, it deserves an E.
You know, I've never thought twice about A, B, C, D, F. Where's the goddamn E?
Well,
give us an
that's
A.
what we were
A,
talking.
B, C, D,
Excellent.
E, F.
That's what we were talking about in the last podcast. My high school had E's, and
And I graded Brain Donors an E,
He
and he cut it out of the episode. It's an E. Clash of the Titans is an E.
Not quite an
It's
F.
an E.
Not quite an F.
All right. You know why? Because of Judy Bowker.
really,
There was nudity in
You're
this one.
bashing it that bad?
No, it's not. This is not Ray Harryhausen's claim to fame. This should not be his claim to fame.
I agree.
It shouldn't.
I gotta ask, why do you think Clash of the Titans is Ray Harryhausen's worst movie?
I don't mean because of his work. I mean just in general.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
movie,
Because
I
as
think
his body
I think
of work.
as his body of work, I think this is one of his best movies
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of the animatics or the kinematics,
Yeah.
the way the puppets moved. I think he did a great job with that. I mean, I don't know who is responsible for the composition of everything, like the composite shots, because those were not the best.
And that's not him.
Yes, that was not him.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you, and thank you for making me clarify that. No, it had
Yeah, I
nothing
think that's
to-
more of a director problem than it is special effects guy.
And maybe it has a little bit.
But he
to
did
do-
produce this. Ray Harryhausen produced
he
Clash
is
of
a
the Titans,
producer
so
on
I'm
this,
guessing,
yeah.
you know, so had this won the Academy Award, he would have accepted the Oscar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's an interesting point.
Which I think he got an Academy Award for his whole body of work a few years after this.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. One of the points that they point out in Kong and Mighty Joe Young, you can always see the hair on the monkeys moving around.
Right.
And in this, you don't see that because they were very, very careful with how they were handling the creatures and
Right, they would move them with sticks. And
with sticks, and they
yeah.
were actually handling the backs of the creatures that would not be on film at that time. So you could always make sure that you weren't getting fur movement.
Yeah, 'cause you do see that too.
You do, and I remember watching King Kong, all of about 3 months ago, and it's a really distracting feature in the original Kong, which of course is not Harryhausen, but was his inspiration.
If you boil this movie down to its simplest form and ignore the details that are sort of irrelevant, what is he doing it for in the old one? He's doing it because his new bride Andromeda is going to get killed. What is he doing it for in the new one? For revenge because his father and family were killed. If you want to get into the details of it, there's slight differences, but all
Like
in all,
Andromeda is
starting
barely in the movie.
Yes, but so what? I mean, that's a completely irrelevant part of the movie. The idea is in the first one, in the 1981, Zeus's son is from the king's daughter instead of from the king's wife. In the 81 version, Zeus comes down as the golden shower and has sex with the king's daughter, and she has a son, and it's Perseus. In the new one, Zeus comes down in an eagle and forms the king's body and has sex with the king's wife, and she has a son, and it's Perseus.
Okay.
Now, who cares about that minute detail?
Yeah, well,
the whole idea is Perseus needs to go through all of these different sort of obstacles in order to save the day at the end. And in the original one, he has to, fight scorpions. In the new one, he has to fight scorpions. In the old one, he has to find the 3 witches.
Scorpions.
Yeah, he has to find the witches so he can figure out how to defeat the Kraken. In the new one, he has to find the witches to figure out how to defeat the Kraken. In the old one, he has to get on the boat and give a gold coin to Death, who runs the river Styx. Same thing in the new one. You can say, like, in the new one, he has that little goddess chick who's a little hottie.
Who
who's
ends
love
up being
interest.
his love interest.
love interest as opposed to Andromeda being the love interest. But that kind of minutia doesn't change the movie and the whole idea. That's director's choice, and like Chris said earlier, neither one of these follow Greek mythology all that accurately. I mean, vaguely, but
is
who
that a
cares?
big deal though?
Not to me.
Okay.
The whole Andromeda or not Andromeda isn't a big deal to me. For me, it's a movie about a guy that has an impossible task, and at the end he wins. You know, it's a movie. It's not a documentary of Greek mythology. It's nothing like that. I mean, what are they called? The guys in the desert who are more something. The Jinn. The Jinn. That's the character.
I love how you remember all these names.
That's
really
a character
bad with
that
names.
wasn't in the original one, but it's in this one, and I don't care. You know, it doesn't make any difference to the movie or the journey of the movie. The thing about the new one, and oddly enough, I liked the new one a lot. I had fun. I watched it on the right day at the right time. I needed a movie that I could just escape from, and the new one has. You know what? Let's just get this out there. I have a man crush on Sam Worthington. The technical aspect of a movie, for somebody to get that far into it and worry about like the third extra's name in a scene and how it relates to the story that really unfolded in the early 80s, but I don't care.
That's a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I don't care.
I'm the
crazy guy. Yeah, you are totally the crazy guy, and I don't care. My whole thing is, how do I react
get
to
into
it?
the third extra? I mean,
Possibly.
That's
Second extra. Yeah, exactly.
What she looks like.
It's more for me about like, did I have fun while I watched it? Did I go into the movie not expecting to grow as a human being, to gain knowledge, not to like better myself in the way of the world, but you know, to enjoy the sound design, the music, the characters. I think, you know, the acting was fun for me. The characters, the humor in it was fun. There was nothing significant, earth-shattering, or moving about this. It shouldn't have been nominated for any awards.
he loves
at all.
this remake, by the way.
Yeah.
You'd
But
never know
it's
it.
fun.
I got no problems with it either.
Here's where I have a problem.
Okay.
The drops of blood. Where did that mass come from to make those giant scorpions?
Mass shifting.
Magic? I don't like that kind of magic.
What with the bloods make
The blood made giant
Well,
scorpions.
It's like in Jason the Argonauts, he threw the teeth and they
the
became the
teeth.
skeletons.
Don't like that.
Perfectly okay that we can turn a guy into a monster.
Zeus, cool.
Yeah.
You know, lightning bolts, cool.
Well,
Blood into scorpions that were that big? At least in the original one, they were a manageable size.
yeah.
Oh, this
These things were
And they
gigantic.
came from Gorgon
Yeah.
blood.
Yes.
they were cool, gigantic scorpions.
They
They were cool, gigantic scorpions.
Yeah.
So, but one thing we do have to talk about though is the one element of both of these films that was a huge change, without giving too much away, is the sidekick Owl again. In the original movie, the Owl actually ends up being a very pivotal character
He
in
gets
the film.
Medusa's head out of the lake.
I didn't want to give away the ending, but you know, it's like the Owl pretty much saves the day.
Saves
Completely superfluous.
Yeah.
It could have been anybody.
we-
Pegasus could have pulled it out of the water.
We
Didn't
flashed
matter.
to 2010, and of course,
Do you think if Lucas could make over episode 1, he'd include Jar Jar again?
probably not. Chris, that's your question.
The amount of crap he got for that? Do you think
Well, it
he
depends on
included
if you were completely reversing
First
time.
of all,
or-
If you
you're talking about the man who still insists that Han shot first. I mean, that Greedo shot first. You know, I mean, like
Yeah.
he's now saying like, oh, there was this wide shot where we shot and that got cut out because the studio made me cut it out. It's a bunch of bullshit. You know?
Lucas is an idiot.
He's
I'll
a
go
liar.
on record.
He's a liar. He's a flat out liar. So I think he would. Yeah, I think he would keep Jar Jar in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I'm saying for that owl in the beginning, yeah, it's a difference. But I mean, what are you going to do? Make the exact same movie? You're going to make the exact
I
same
actually think
everything?
the owl in the remake, like the whole
where
joke,
they nodded to it.
the whole
gag.
joke and gag
Leave
of
it.
like just get rid of it and throw it away, is really cool because
I do too.
Because I think
do
it's
too.
actually very symbolic of this is not the '81 Clash of the Titans.
Exactly.
This is not your father's Clash.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
That's the point I was getting to.
And I think the fact that the owl makes an appearance in Wrath of the Titans also pretty cool.
Oh, you ruined it. I haven't gotten to see it.
Oh, it's okay.
Now,
It's-
I actually like the way they handled the owl in Wrath of the Titans.
I do
You
too.
find,
I
you find
totally
out,
agree.
You find out in Wrath of the Titans that the owl's actually Perseus' father.
And mother.
Yeah, and it can turn into a sled.
Why a sled?
Why not?
Rosebud.
Clearly.
So yeah,
Well, I gotta call Corey on this.
Okay,
because
that's cool. Let's
You
do it.
just spent 20 minutes telling me how you saw this on a bright sunny day, and it's a great movie because it's fun, and you could care less about the third generation character. But then the film that was pivotal in your college years, you gave a C.
He's a harsh
I am.
grader.
I am.
What the hell is
I am
that?
a complex individual. There are lots
You're
of
a liar.
layers. There are lots of layers here.
we're all complex.
I
Don't worry
have to
about it.
think about who am I giving this grade to? Who out there am I giving this grade to?
Yeah.
I'm not. It's not for me because I'll watch whatever the hell I want to watch, whenever the hell I want to
I've
watch it,
watched
regardless
Planet
of
Outer
what
Space a
anybody
dozen
else
times
wants
and
me to
still
watch
love
or
it.
thinks they want me to watch. Right?
Yeah.
I don't watch other movies because somebody else tells me it's good or
Okay.
they like it.
Well-
and I don't want to tell other people what they should watch. I give it a C because
The original.
the original.
All right.
I give a C because I just watched it again
Do
today.
do you like this remake because of the original? Like
If I didn't see the original and I saw this, no, I would still love this movie.
okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the original. For me, they're two completely different movies. When
Right.
you,
And you
They are
need to be you need to be able to like separate yourself from those
Yeah.
two in order to give a believable grade.
You know, because the first one was so impactful on your life. I was curious if you're like, oh, why did they even bother to remake this?
I thought that. I
But-
definitely thought that when I
okay.
first heard they
'Cause I
were
think a lot
remaking
of
it.
people thought that.
Yeah.
Fans and people that just didn't give
Yeah.
a crap.
I hated this thing.
Really?
I
really-
hated everything about
I really
it.
wanted Randy to talk.
I absolutely loathe this movie. And it is because of all those little details that they did not necessarily that they did different. I mean, the whole build up to why he's going on his quest makes a difference to me, and all the little details of how he gets there, and changing the character from.
Can I stop you right there and compare the reason why he's doing what he's doing? In the first one, he's growing up naked on a beach with a hot mom, riding horses, standing up and looking how good I am, flaunting around, eating. He's got servants. Everything is just rosy and beautiful for him.
It is.
In this one, he gets cast out, is picked up by a fisher, and his whole family is killed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
what's more like? What would motivate you more?
It's that-
like I'm heir to the throne.
But that's-
I'm naked with my mom who's hot. Look at her butt.
But that takes the whole.
What's this?
It changes the whole tone of the movie because now you're
Yes,
watching the Punisher.
this is believable.
You're watching the Punisher. His family is killed, so he goes out to wipe out.
kiss my ass! You're watching the Punisher.
No, he's going
That's
out. He's
every
pissed at
movie.
He's
The
pissed
Punisher
at the-
ripped off from so many movies prior to that.
Well, the Punisher, if you want to get into comics, he's been around a long time. But
Has he been around as long as film? No. Then he stole from something.
who stole from the Greeks who originally wrote all this?
Yes.
So
Who
what is it,
stole
there's-
from the Sumerians, for God's
There's
sake?
only 7 stories in
but
the world.
that's-
What I love about the original is that it is a happy movie. You sit down and you watch it, and you're immersed in this world where things are wonderful and beautiful, and he's growing up on this nice island, and you've got the
that's-
meddling
What
gods.
point,
that's very-
at what
that's
point
very-
is a sacrifice of a virgin to a sea god beautiful?
But the whole
From
business with him and the hot
filmmaking-
mom
from
and
the
the servants,
filmmaking
that's
point of view,
very
it-
Greek myth. It's like
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
like this is a god and everything's
Absolutely.
going great for them. And now you got to do this thing
Because
Now
there,
you've
there
gotta do
are
this
absolutely
whole
no edible complexes
This is-
in Greek mythology.
Well, I'm just saying, like it's just that's what it's like. Everything's bright and rosy. Oh crap! Now you got this problem. This film I felt was a little more like, well, we got to make it like Gladiator.
this movie
Yeah,
was
we
more
gotta
like
make
an
it like Gladiator.
Aerosmith video.
You know.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, screw being a god. I'm pissed at the gods. The gods suck. I'm not. Another thing that killed me about this is in the first one, he gets the gifts from the gods, and he takes them and he uses them, and again that follows a lot of Greek myth. In this, it's like, hey, give me the sword.
Hell
Screw
with you, I
him.
want to be a man.
I'm going to be a man, and I'm going to do it as a man, and screw the gods, and blah 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 blah. And then at the end, it's like, well, I better use the sword. So the entire point of this movie is that I'm a man, and I'm going to do this as a man, and I'm going to beat the gods at their own game because I'm a man and not a god. And then at the very end, he uses their stuff to win. Yeah. If that was the point of this movie, was that, I'm better than the gods because I'm a man, they fail at the end.
I don't think that was the point of the movie. I think the point of the movie was they both have to exist.
And just to get back to the technical stuff, you were going off about the technical stuff in the original. I completely agree. The technical stuff in the original is bad. I mean, they've got bad editing and this and that.
I hate using the word bad. I want to say, like, primitive.
It's not even...
Yeah, but it wasn't. There were movies 10 years prior to that were better edited.
Yeah, it's bad editing.
Harryhausen movies that were better.
Yes. One that we referenced tonight was better.
Yeah.
This movie was a movie that was made for 3D... And
this wasn't made for 3D. It was initially intended for a 2D release.
Okay,
and then they converted it for 3D.
Perfectly fine. But they still
went... Titanic.
They still went and did all the, here's a giant spear in your face. I'm going to throw this towards you. Oh my god, here's a kraken tentacle over your head.
Just because you're adding that voice doesn't make it bad.
No, it really doesn't. It really does. Take off the rose-colored glasses, and it blows. I could have watched it in 2D. I could have watched it in 3D. I chose to watch it in 3D. I hate 3D movies.
Yeah, me too.
Because they're usually gimmicky. This was gimmicky.
Yeah.
And when I went to Wrath, the way they do the 3D in Wrath...
81 Clash of Titans wasn't gimmicky.
It's gimmicky. Yeah. But when I got to Wrath, the way they handled 3D was great. I thought it was fantastic. I thought they handled 3D correctly because stuff did throw at you, stuff did come at you.
And the guy going
I disagree.
It's a ridiculous
I don't think there's ever going to be a 3D that I'm going to say, oh, cool, I like it. Yeah, that's great. Good idea. Good use of 3D. I live in 3D. I can watch movies in 2D and still be okay.
But to Chris's point, this was made 2D and then repurposed for 3D. That's probably why you liked Wrath more, because Wrath was made for 3D.
As far as the 3D portions go, yes. But in general, as a movie, I didn't like this because it was so dark, and it was dark for the sake of being dark.
I totally see what you're
totally
saying
force
there.
that. If you're going to talk about the philosophy of the movie and why they made it and how they made it and the technical aspects of what the movie is... we could have a conversation for 3 hours about it. For me, movies aren't about that. For me, it's emotion. For me, it's how you are affected by it. It's like reading a book.
Sure.
Any book that you read, you can read 3 different times and get 3 different responses from that.
So what grade do you give it, Corey?
B.
B. Randy?
For all the hate on that I have for it, I have to give it a C, and that's because the special effects really are quite good. The Kraken is a really cool scene. So as a special effects movie, it's fun in that respect. I give it a C.
Yeah. And you have a man crush on Sam Worthington.
I give it a basic B.
That would be you.
Oh, that was me.
I give it a basic B. I enjoy the CGI. I kind of enjoyed the different changes in the story, the fixes and the upgrades. We forgot to mention, I also thought it was interesting that the Medusa scene happens a lot earlier in the remake than it did in the original. Yeah. So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing too. But I'm going to go B.
That experience you had in 77 in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, was the same experience that a lot of the ancient Greeks had, seeing these myths played out in plays. Where they were like...
Were you there?
Where there's these universal truths. This is how we're trying to explain our world. We're trying to get some common experience. And what Clash of the Titans does, the original and the remake, is delves into that world and cherry picks what it wants to try to tell a story to recreate yet the same thing. A community experience where we're all sitting in the theater and we're trying to have a shared experience. Like, every movie's like that if you think about it.
Sure.
I take my kids to movie theaters maybe 2 times a year. Just because we can't afford to take 5 kids to the theater, right?
Do you take them with you? Yeah. Are you there with them?
I am with them.
Yeah, it's not the kids, it's the teenagers.
But what I'm saying is, when they go to the theater, they're just as excited as I feel we were as kids going to the movie theater. They're like, this is something special. They're not getting it every week, is what I'm saying. Right. You know? So when you go there, it's still something like, it's still that escapist special treat. I had the pleasure of seeing this with Phil. We went to the movie, in
the theaters,
in a theater, which he suffered through all the things you were talking about. He was uncomfortable with people talking, everything else. I like this movie. I really enjoyed it, and I don't have an emotional attachment to the original, so like it's kind of easy for me to say that. But my big thing, and I said this film, and I feel the same way about Wrath, is this film came out in March, and I had just came off my Greek mythology class, and I was really into it and enjoying this. But I said to Phil Levens, like, damn, I wish this was a summer movie. Like, because it is a summer movie that they release in March, and I want it, like, when I see a movie like this, I want to walk out of the theater and for it to be stifling hot, and thankful that I was in the air conditioning for 2 hours watching a really good movie and everything else. And you don't have that type of movie experience when it's in the spring, and when there's 7 people sitting there because it's March. Right. Like, there's not, like, you go to a summer movie and it's a blockbuster, people are there.
So, I'm sorry, Chris, you went through a very cool breakdown of how you thought of the remake of Clash of Titans, but what was your grade?
A.
Excellent. Thank you.
I really liked it, and the timing was perfect, because, again, I just came off that class, and all the things I've already said, like, I really didn't mind. I thought the effects were great, and I thought the story was great, and I thought the look and feel was pretty cool. Like I said, I wish it was actually released in the summer, because I think it's a really good summer movie.
Yeah, I agree. Totally.
I remember, what the greatest moment? Coming out of Back to the Future, there was a thunderstorm that was just about to happen. I'm in the Beaver Dam Mall parking lot. We come out, lightning strikes those metal poles that hold up trees, strikes one of them in the parking lot.
Awesome.
Like, enough, when the lightning strikes close, your hair starts to stand up and shit, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, lightning.
Ralph Fiennes and Liam Neeson both return, and Sam Worthington all return to the movie. But they did an interesting change in the actress who was playing Andromeda.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting. I don't quite understand why they did that. I don't know.
She had a prior engagement.
Yeah, or either they just wanted an actress with a little bit bigger resume, because it was a bigger part. If you ask me, the girl from the first movie was much cuter, but that's my opinion.
Yeah. It is 10 years later. Perseus has a wife and a child, except his wife has recently passed away, so he's a widower. He is out of the whole business of being a demigod. He is back to being a fisherman. He wants nothing to do with that, way of life anymore. And of course, things will happen that are going to drag him back into that life. The Titans are waking up. The gods are losing their power. People are not praying to the gods anymore, which is where they get their power from. And according to Zeus, that is undoing all of the works that they have done. So the Titans are about to be loosed upon the world. Poseidon, Hades, and Zeus, who are brothers and sons of the main Titan Kronos, they are going to work together to contain the Titans and kill them, do whatever it is that they're going to do. And at the beginning of the film, Hades turns on his brothers, and of course, he's...
And Hades was the bad guy.
He was the bad guy in the first
Clash,
one.
too. So
he's the bad guy in Clash, so he continues to be the bad guy. Big surprise, because Zeus had screwed him over and made him Lord of Hell, basically.
Yeah.
As opposed to living on the surface world. So, he's pissed. It's understandable. And he is basically working to resurrect Kronos. So that's the basic plot point. Perseus is called upon to stop it, or else the entire world will be destroyed. And Zeus implores on him, because he is half human, that he doesn't have the same weaknesses as the gods, who are weakening because they're not receiving prayers from the masses.
Yeah. So we get into the same old formula that was started way back with Harryhausen, where we have plot, monster, plot, monster.
Right.
But it holds up well. I think the CGI improved much more, even in this one, in Wrath of the Titans. It was beautiful. I thought the Kronos effects were great.
Yep.
The thing about this with Wrath is it's sort of like, well, we made a really good movie, and we got to make a sequel. So, what do they want? They want the monsters. They want that. They want the gods.
They want smart ass comments.
They need the funny guy for the road trip.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it just becomes a little formulaic and whatnot. I enjoyed watching the movie.
Yeah.
Going back, it's a popcorn movie. what I found really interesting was watching this. I'm like, wow, they're really trying to Judeo-Christian up Greek myth.
Yeah.
You know, really trying. Like, the whole thing with, like, Perseus, like, you know, because you're half God, half man, you can do this thing where we can't, and, you've got both sides of the equations, and all that business. And then what got me was, and this is a spoiler, but what got me was the Zeus-Hades conversation near Kronos, where Zeus, strung out in a crucifixion-like structure, says to Hades, who's tormenting him, do you forgive me for what I did to you? And Hades like, why? He says, because I forgive you for what you're doing to me.
Yeah.
Which is very Good Friday, like, Jesus forgiving all the people that are persecuting him.
Or Mithra, or Horus, or any religion ever made on the planet.
But watching Wrath of the Titans, when did it come out? What was the initial release date? We saw it on Palm Sunday.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we saw it on Palm Sunday.
30th.
So like
March
all the
30th,
stuff's fresh in my head.
Right.
As you're watching, I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, like to your point, there's a lot of shared things, but it just felt. And then I started to think more about both the remake Clash of the Titans and this, where it's like, are they trying to, repackage these and twist and change mythology for today? Well, you could make the argument that the '81 film did that too. They repackaged it for that day.
That's exactly what movies do.
Well, didn't Mel Gibson direct Wrath?
No.
It was like a 15-second delay getting that
smart-ass comment. Sue.
But it felt a little all over the map. And I said to Phil as we left the theater, I was like, it was a fun ride, but it's a watered-down version of the last thing, which was a remake. And when you have a watered-down sequel to a remake...
Which is watered down to begin with.
I enjoyed the ride of this movie all the way up to there's a point where there's a tremendous big battle near like 3/4 of the movie and really huge, great special effects. Holy crap, this is incredible, And then Zeus says, "There's one more battle to fight," and I'm like, "Not for me."
That was enough.
That was enough, man. Roll the credits, and they went on like another 20-30 minutes, and you're like, "Oh man."
And this brings us back to what we were talking about the WWF getting into this. What was turning me off about the movie, and don't get me wrong, I liked it too. The CGI is great. It's a fun ride. But what was killing me was it seemed like there was a good guy, then he turned bad, and then he turned good, and it was like it actually started feeling like a WWF thing. and about 3/4 through the movie, there is an actual body slam in the movie.
Yes,
and I'm like, leg lock,
and I'm like, oh my god, it's the WWF. It really is, and you mentioned it too. It's like it was starting to.
I actually liked it. I liked it a lot better than the first one. I obviously didn't like the first one. I made that pretty clear. And one thing that was mentioned when we were talking about the remake, was that you had all the same bits. They had to fight some scorpions. They had to fight go to the Stygian witches. They had to fight the Medusa. They had to fight the Kraken. And all those things felt completely disjointed. The entire thing with Calabas was completely forced. Like, he had no business being in that movie at all. And in story-wise, as far as Clash of the Titans, the 2010 version, this one not being beholden to the original could be its own thing. So, okay, they had their plot, they laid out their monsters, they went and they fought their monsters, and it was great. It was a popcorn flick, absolutely. Was it, did I come out smarter? No, I did not. But CGI, all the things I bitched about, the CGI and making it in 3D for the 2010 Clash of the Titans, this got it right. This did, in my mind, this did 3D the correct way, where it just added depth to the film in some of the things where, he's flying around the lava monster, Kronos, and he's shooting lava at him and stuff. It wasn't forced. It looked cool. It was integrated into the movie. And the 3D effects in this really popped for me. So for me, this was a much better movie. Again, was it great?
Awesome.
Was it plot hole filled? Absolutely. I could drive a Mack truck through a lot of the plot holes that were in this thing.
I had a huge problem with the labyrinth and the
Minotaur. I thought they absolutely wasted the labyrinth and Minotaur in this movie. If they were planning to make this a franchise set of movies, the Minotaur in the Labyrinth had no business being in here.
Right.
It didn't need to happen, but the movie was only like $1.30 on time anyway. It wasn't a very long movie.
Right.
If you'd cut out the Minotaur scene, you'd end up with an hour and 20-minute movie.
Yeah,
That's an animated movie.
And they made up for that lack with the Makai. Is that, am I pronouncing that right? The two-bodied warriors at the end.
Yeah.
Like, that was just fun to watch.
That was fun to watch. It was cool.
It was like they were really kick-ass.
Yeah, I didn't catch the name on those critters, but those were cool-looking critters.
Yeah.
I mean, just as a movie, it was fun. You know, I went to it, I enjoyed it, I came out, and I wasn't pissed. You know, the first one, when I came out of it,
Really?
it's like...
The 2010 one angered you?
It did, because it was...
I know that feeling.
Well, he mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, it was a dark movie, whereas the first one is a light movie.
Yeah.
It failed to have the character... It used all the same plot elements, but it shifted them all around, and again, you know, things like Calabas having no business being in the movie. It's like, well, why are you here? You're not the right guy. Like...
Yeah.
You know, the way the gods were manipulative in the first one, the only gods that mattered were Zeus and Hades.
My Fartex.
You know, in the 81 version, there were a bunch of gods that were kind of playing around and had little bits and roles and were doing things. And for those that are tuning in, who listen to the Star Wars podcast, who tune in from that, I promised Star Wars references, and there were many.
That's right.
Hey, I referenced a few too.
Yes, you did.
So, what's your final grade for Wrath, Randy?
I give it a solid B. It was total popcorn entertainment. It's not going to change the world. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Christopher?
Yeah, I'll give it a B too, because I did enjoy watching the movie.
Yeah, it was fun.
It has its flaws, but whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna go B-. I kind of liked the Clash one a little bit more. That WWF thing was really starting to grate on my nerves. I am a big spring and summer movie fan, so since it is movie-going time again, we wanted to start a new segment about new releases in the theaters. I want to thank our friend Rich Shumaker for helping me out with this endeavor. Hey Rich, how are you?
Thank you very much, Phil, for putting this together.
No problem. So let's get started. John Carter came out on March 9th.
I saw John Carter in the El Capitan VIP section.
Wow.
So I think my rating for the movie is a bit skewed.
Beautiful to watch and an interesting ride, but they kept having huge issues in the believability area, and it became silly and at times comical. I went with a C.
I give it a B-.
21 Jump Street, released March 16th.
I haven't seen 21 Jump Street, but the TV show launched Johnny Depp.
For me, there were some moments of smart, fun comedy, but the film was hindered by a lot of cheap potty humor that shoots the film in the foot, and it started to drag. My grade, C+.
Wanted to say that I loved The Hunger Games.
Hunger Games came out on March 23rd. You've heard about it, I'm sure. It's made a lot of bucks. It's made a lot of press.
It reminded me of a PBS movie I saw when I was about 8 or 9 called The Lottery. A very scary movie.
That's interesting.
I rated it at an A.
I am pleased to say I gave it a B+. And finally, the Three Stooges movie, which was released on April 13th. Kudos to the actors who play the Stooges, and I enjoyed watching Moe kick the crap out of the cast of Jersey Shore, but that is about all. It's pretty awful. My grade, D+ for that one. Well, Rich, thanks so much for helping us out with this segment. I'll see you next month.
Thanks, Phil, for having me on. Love the Dying Breed Movie Club meets the movies.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks again to Chris,
Thank you.
Corey, and Randy. Next month, the Dying Breed Movie Club and myself will get ready for the much anticipated Joss Whedon directed Marvel's Avengers film coming to theaters on May 4th.
But is it part of the Whedon-verse?
Creative consultant, Chris Mich. Technical director, Rich Shumaker. Special thanks to Christy Mich, Deborah Kemp Petras, Dee Fay, and me, Paula Burke. The Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies is produced by Deep Lake Pictures Entertainment and has no connection to any of the movies, artists, or motion picture companies seen or discussed in The Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies whatsoever. Copyrights for films, images, sound bites, trademark characters, and related materials discussed in The Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies remain with their respective owners. All materials are solely used for criticism, discussion, and artistic interpretation based on the fair use laws of the United States.